Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Justin here, and today I've got the review for you of the iPhone 6s. So I am very late to this, and my mission in this review is to bring it to you from the perspective of someone who has used an iPhone as a daily driver for the past few years. And whether or not the new features in the iPhone 6s really do affect my daily uses from what I've noticed, and whether it is worth it to purchase in the first place. So of course you do have your typical spec bumps, and the iPhone 6s once again does. It is the Apple A9 processor, which is said to be significantly faster than the year before. That is pretty typical, but you've also got 2GB of RAM this time around. I didn't have any issues in terms of speed with the previous iPhones, but on the new iPhone I definitely noticed that things are just smoother, and I didn't notice as many stutters on heavy load or anything, especially when running daily tasks even. As you can see from the benchmark scores, it definitely shows that this iPhone has a huge capability with its A9 processor, and the 2GB of RAM definitely helps as well for background running apps and if you're running a whole bunch of things at once. When it comes to the design of the iPhone 6s, it pretty much does stay the same with some microscopic differences in terms of the thickness, but other than that, aside from the small little separated S emblem on the back of the device, there isn't much of a difference at all compared to previous generation. However, the iPhone 6s is constructed out of 7000 series aluminum, which helps with the bend gate. The device is said to be much sturdier. And by the way, if you like these D-brand skins that I am sporting on my iPhone 6s, be sure to check the link in the description. The device itself is very sleek, and it is also available in a new color this year, which Apple calls rose gold, but I'm pretty sure everyone just calls it pink. I did mention that there was a slight addition to the thickness of the device, but it was almost unnoticeable, and your cases should work just fine if you had the iPhone 6 before, but the device is slightly heavier because of the 3D Touch. Speaking of 3D Touch, it is said to be one of the biggest new features on the iPhone 6s, with the ability to peek or pop different fields or app interfaces, and it seems like a lot of apps are already starting to adopt this new feature on the iPhone. That being said, although I really like the feature, I never really found myself using it much at all over the month of having the iPhone 6s. It is definitely something I can live without, and one disadvantage to the 3D Touch is if you crack the display, it will cost you more to repair for sure. On the other hand, the Touch ID fingerprint sensor has also been greatly improved in the iPhone 6s, and it is almost instantaneous, which some people were complaining about it was too fast. Moving on to the displays, in the S iteration it really hasn't changed at all. It is still a 4.7-inch display with a 1334 by 750 resolution, and of course you also have the 5.5-inch iPhone 6 Plus if you're a fan of a larger phone. iPhones are known to bring a very natural look in the screen representation, and I think it still looks great. However, I do wish that they do move to a higher resolution, possibly QHD, which we will more than likely see in the next iPhone 7. The camera is also one of the new things that they have changed on the iPhone 6s, and if you're a current owner of the iPhone 6, I think it is probably one of the bigger reasons why you might want to upgrade to the new 6s. You've got a 12 megapixel sensor, as Apple has finally stepped up the megapixel count, and you've also got a 5 megapixel camera on the front. Perhaps the thing I'm going to be using the most is the 4K video recording, and although when I first purchased the iPhone, I didn't notice that big of an improvement in the camera, as I got to use it and compared it with some other photos, even on other smartphones, I realized that the iPhone does have a pretty damn good camera. It still has its signature consistency, it is able to capture exposure very nicely, and with the new Touch ID, Apple has implemented something called Live Photos, which allows you to take a photo and it will also record some of the motion and turn it into something like a GIF that you can view from your smartphone. Again, I didn't really use this a lot, but it's there if you like it. In addition to that, you also have a front-facing flash using the display, which actually senses the color of your environment. When I use the iPhone 6s's camera, I notice that it takes amazing photos. The sharpness is just so beautiful, and I'm very happy that they jumped it up to 12 megapixels. But one small flaw I would say is, compared to other smartphones that I tested like the Samsung and LG, it just wasn't as fast to focus. But if you take the time to touch to focus, you'll really get an amazing shot. And what I noticed the most is that the dynamic range on the iPhone, even when HDR isn't on, was better than its competitors. Some shots in that case though did come out a little bit underexposed in my opinion. The colors on the front-facing camera look good as well, and the extra megapixel count is definitely appreciated. 4K video recording was also stunning. I thought it looked really good, and I'm so glad that Apple has finally brought 4K video recording to an iPhone. As you can see here, the video looks great. However, one thing is that the iPhone 6 does not have optical image stabilization. You would have to opt for the 6S Plus for that. And from what I saw, it is a big difference actually. This year, Apple introduced iOS 9 for the iPhones and the iPads, of course. For my daily use, I really didn't notice that big of a difference to change the way I use the iPhone or anything, but some of the new improvements are definitely welcome. I'm definitely someone who doesn't really use Siri, but I know a lot of people who do, and that is said to be vastly improved this year. I'd rather have a better battery life though, so I've disabled Siri in most cases. The search is also said to be much smarter now. It also shows your recent apps in your left menu, which Apple has brought back. Your multitasking menu is also new and improved. You also have your news on the left side of that new page. And of course, on the iPhone 6S, there is the Force Touch, which, like I mentioned, many third-party apps are starting to implement into their apps one by one. I did mention earlier in this video, I really haven't used it at all, but I think it's more of the fact that I just keep forgetting about it, and I'm used to using my phone, the iPhone 6S previously, the same way I had used it the year before. When you take down your notification menu, of course you have the option to add different widgets which display information, and that is very nice. For example, my package tracker, and your notifications are very simplified and are very familiar if you're coming from an iPhone. Although Apple does mention many under the hood changes in terms of performance improvements and metal, I have to be totally honest with you, with my daily uses, I haven't noticed that many improvements or changes in iOS 9. The way I use my device is pretty much the same as before. When it comes to the gaming performance, the capability of the Apple A9 processor is insane, and you could see here that pretty much any game you put at it, you're not going to experience any lag, and that is really no surprise, and I see that with every flagship smartphones out there. The processor technology is really fast moving. There's constantly improvements to the processor, and I kind of feel like it's moving beyond what we need in the amount of time, when other technologies such as battery could be focused on a bit more. One of the biggest issues I had with the iPhone 6 was the battery life. I was literally getting like 3 or 4 hours of screen on time and running out about halfway through the day as a heavy user. The battery size this year has been slightly decreased to 1715 milliamp hours, and I wasn't really happy about that, but the real world performance is what I was going to be comparing to. With iOS 9, it promises 1 hour of additional time before charging, and from seeing some bulk tests, it seems like Apple has optimized the battery in a way that it actually lasts quite long. And I did notice that when using the device the same way I use the iPhone 6, I was able to make it through the entire day and hit the 20% mark at just about 8 p.m., in which I would enable the low power mode. So that is one of the better improvements in my opinion. So despite the smaller battery in this device, you'll definitely notice an improvement coming from the 6 at least. Something that is still missing, however, is a wireless charging technology or a fast charging technology on the iPhone. So we're going to have to wait for that. So that just about wraps it up for my review of the iPhone 6S. And as you noticed throughout the video, I did talk a lot about a lot of things being the same, whether it was the way I use a device as a daily driver. Some of the things I definitely noticed in daily use is that the device was just overall much smoother, as I'm always switching around apps, Safari browser, watching a YouTube video, sending a tweet, replying to messages, and the extra RAM definitely helps out, as well as the improvement in the processor. I also love that the Touch ID sensor is instantaneous now, and more importantly, I think the camera is definitely improved compared to the previous generation, but it isn't a groundbreaking change in any way. 4K video recording is definitely nice, so to anyone out there looking to get a new iPhone and currently has an iPhone 6, really the only reason I can really recommend to go out and buy a brand new smartphone is either the battery life or the 4K video recording if that's what you like to do. Obviously the iPhone is one of the most expensive phones out there, especially if you're going to be going for the 64 gig variant, which most of you will be doing. But I have to say, coming from an iPhone 6, I really don't have a major reason as to why you should go out and buy a brand new smartphone. If you can wait, you definitely should. Other than that, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to hit that like button as it helps the channel out a bunch, and I'll see you all in the next video.